Hello children, today we're out in this dry pine flatwood habitat in search for very specific kinds of grasshoppers that are in the genus Melanoplus. Specifically, we're looking for small wingless scrub grasshoppers in the Melanoplus puer complex. Now, last week I found what was definitely a puer complex here, and now we're out here trying to see if we could tell what species in the complex they are. So let's see what we could find out here. Right in here is this perfectly camouflaged graceful meadow katydid. I actually rarely ever see graceful meadow katydids. I normally see slender meadow katydids and more commonly the Caribbean meadow katydid. So I'm really excited to be finally finding an adult of this species, which I've never seen before, only the juveniles. So it's a pretty dull meadow katydid. It's not as bright green as some of the other species, and you can see that dark line running behind the eye, as well as the white lines running along the side of the black line running down the middle of the body. So it's a lot more complex stripy pattern than normal for a meadow katydid, and it makes them pretty distinctive. This right here is what I believe to be an adult male Shistocerca cerealis cubense. However, this is a little far north for what I'd expect from this species, but everything seems to match, from the small size to the very large bulbous eyes, the very slanted face, and the sharp downward facing prosternal process, that bump under the throat. This right here confirms what I thought before. This is the nymph of Shistocerca cerealis cubense. You could tell because it is overall plain matte green, with very pale, kind of tan colored eyes. The very similar American bird grasshopper, as adults, would be almost identical to the Shistocerca cerealis cubense. However, as nymphs, the American bird grasshopper has much darker eyes, as well as much shinier skin, almost looking oily in the sun. Like I showed with the adult earlier, I couldn't really be sure about the ID, but now that I finally caught this nymph right here, I'm pretty confident that the population up here is Shistocerca cerealis cubense. Now this grasshopper might look pretty similar to you, and it is a close relative in the same genus, Shistocerca. However, this is the nymph of the Mischievous bird grasshopper, another species of bird grasshopper that I see around this area. Now, you could tell that this is a Mischievous bird grasshopper nymph by the fact that it has a bit of a more stocky and compact build than the cerealis cubense, as well as a much lighter, paler green color and a pretty distinct ridge on the pronotum, or that ridge running down the middle of the top of the thorax. Right here we have finally found ourselves our first Melanoplus puer complex. Now I can't wait to finally find some matures, as some good in-hand views will be needed to determine the species. However, based on range where we are in Palm Beach County, this could be Melanoplus peninsularis, and most likely is that. Now, members of the Melanoplus puer complex really like living in bushy areas, and as you can see, this very young juvenile is just hiding behind a leaf, thinking I don't see it. But I was able to get some great shots of the yellow ventral side. Now, members of the Melanoplus puer complex do have a yellow coloration at the bottom. However, some species might have more than others, and from what I've heard, Melanoplus peninsularis has brighter yellow than some of the other species. Juveniles are quite variable, and as you can see, these are all the same species. However, this one has a bit more reddish coloration on the body than normal, but still has that overall distinctive shape of the Melanoplus puer complex. Still haven't found any matures though, so we can't be sure on the species yet. Alright, finally, right here we have ourselves an adult male of this Melanoplus species that I really want to know what species it is. So let's see if I could catch him and show you some up-close in-hand views and see if we could determine the species. It's incredible to me how this is a full-grown male, yet he is less than the size of my thumbnail. This is absolutely unbelievable how small these are. But anyways, by looking up close at the male's cerci and just in general the appendages at the tip of his abdomen, like the furcula, which are these little structures at the top of the tip of the abdomen, the supraanal plate, which is this little plate that covers the top of the tip of the abdomen, the shape of the cerci, which are the little appendages extending out from the side of the abdomen, in this case, looking like long, thin triangles, indicating that this is in the melanoplus puer complex. Unfortunately, when it comes to structure, we can't get much farther than this, because it requires dissection and a good view of the internal structure to be sure of the species, which is why together they are known as a species complex, because they're almost impossible to tell apart in the field. However, there are some color indicators that can be found on females. Melanoplus peninsularis females have much brighter coloration than any of the females in the other members of the melanoplus puer complex. Notably, the bright purple coloration on the hind tibiae, or the bottom part of the back legs, and the bright kind of reddish orange color on the bottom of the hind femora, or the top part of the back legs. In general, too, this species tends to have a larger, more stocky build, as well as a less pronounced ridge running down the median carina, or the center of the thorax. These traits, plus range, lead me to thinking this is Melanoplus peninsularis. This is a find that I'm really excited to be sharing with you for two reasons. First, because this species, Melanoplus peninsularis, is one that I don't believe has ever been photographed by live specimens. There were no records of this species on iNaturalist previously, and all the pictures I could find on the internet of this species are either of dead specimens or sketches in research papers. And second, the wingless melanoplus grasshoppers are a group that I don't feel like get enough recognition. Since they can't fly away, they're practically helpless and oftentimes live in very isolated populations. Like with these Melanoplus peninsularis, I've gone to so many scrubs all throughout southeastern Florida, and this is the only spot I've ever seen them at. It's a wonder there's so many species that are persisting, but a lot of them have very small populations, and are one of the many reasons we should try and help preserve as many areas as we have left of Florida scrub habitat.